Hi, I'm Jen, and welcome to Therapist Sanctuary, where therapists gather just to be in the company of each other and to hear that you're not alone. All the things you think and worry about and stress about and get Sunday night anxiety and insomnia from, you are not alone. And I just want there to be a place where it's safe enough to talk about it openly and to just know how powerful it is when you show up from authenticity and your true being for that person in front of you. And you just listen. Stop trying to do to and just be with. It's so much easier. Trust me, you're going to enjoy your job a lot more. And I'm here to do that with you. So let's do it, shall we? Hi, you guys. This is Jen here from Therapist Sanctuary. It's a podcast. Welcome to it. It's for therapists and by therapists, which you guys all are, on basically how we get through this work and what the work is like and what it's like being a human being in this work, and a place for therapists to be supported, really. So welcome. I've got Scott, Haley, and Willa.
Hi.
Hi. And I know you guys from doing a group together, a supervision group. And that group, I just want to say, I think being with you guys over that 8-month spell gave me hope that this field is still continuing on with beautiful people who really want to go deep and want to get into stuff and want to look at themselves. And it kind of inspired me, because you get cynical after. I've gotten cynical. I've gotten kind of like, oh, it's too fucking heady and it's too, like, I got kind of negative. So I'm so glad I got to know you, and I'm hoping today we can just dive into what it's like for you this early stage of your career. And I want to tell you what I'm for, because I can get really into what I'm against, which I probably will, but I'm trying to start out with what am I for? So this is what I'm for. I am really for therapists being allowed to be really fucking real, that they don't have to hide behind a facade or a persona or a mask that all is well in their life and they never struggle. I'm really for therapists just joining with their clients as an equal, not to say there isn't a power differential, but as a human being who also has journeyed and journeys on their own path of healing. And that we learn to talk about that and be open about that. And what I'm really for is that by doing that, we become better therapists. So that's my point of being here. So let's start with Scott. Why don't you just give me an answer to this? I'm going to tell you the definition of sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to hear from you. So sanctuary's definition is a place of refuge or safety or protection. So as you've moved into this field for you, what do you think you've needed sanctuary from as a new therapist?
I think it's kind of a loaded question for me, because I actually did certification in the sanctuary model. So I actually...
The model was one.
Yeah, so there's a sanctuary model in mental health care, and I did my certification in it in order to bring it back to my old workplace when I worked as a director in an acute hospital. Mm-hmm. What I needed sanctuary from was kind of this whole idea, this construct of therapy and this construct of mental health care, which to me feels very old. I think there are new and emerging stuff coming forward, but it doesn't always find its way through the cracks yet. There's this, we found it with you, that you talked about that 8 months that we spent together. I mean, I got to spend 8 months every week with my favorite people on the planet. because it was so honest and open. And that's what I needed sanctuary from this kind of closed off, you have to be a blank canvas kind of approach, rather than I'm an actual living, breathing human being that feels things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I needed sanctuary from.
Love it. I love the phrase closed off. No, I don't love the phrase. I don't love the experience, but I know it captures for me what I know what you mean in this field. The term closed off is kind of, for me, the style of therapy where we're maybe like ultra safe and risk-free for an employer or a system.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think about that. Is that what closed off, like, what would you say it means for you?
It was that, and it was kind of the experience in therapy training, despite, because I came into this like late in my career. It was really a kind of my retirement plan initially, and then my life changed. But I had like 30 years under my belt in clinical practice as a nurse, and I found it very weird going from the mainstream healthcare system into therapy. It was this very false kind of pseudo professional weirdness. And I remember in counseling skills course in my master's education, we're being observed by our tutor, but we're kind of talking about real world stuff. And one of my other students who I was counseling mentioned something, and I asked a question about that. I'm like, oh, what was that like for you then with your family? And was immediately interrupted, like, why are you asking that? That's not what she's here for. Oh. And I just remembered, like, this moment stayed with me for ages afterwards, that I'd done something wrong. I'd asked a wrong question, but
God forbid you asked a question about someone's unconscious material that might be actually either there.
Yeah, and just it felt very relevant in the moment, but it was shut down very quickly. And, you know, she came with anxiety. Why are you asking that? I'm like, because she kind of referred to an abusive upbringing. I'm wondering if the root of her anxiety, that's not what we're here for. Deal with her anxiety, and thinking, I'm in the wrong place. That's what I thought, is I'm in the wrong place.
Oh, God. Yes. That hurts, actually, to hear. It hurts to hear that that is sort of being taught at a master's level, that this is the way we do it. Yeah. So let's hear from you, Haley. What do you need sanctuary from as you venture in to being a therapist?
When you first asked that to Scott, I was really glad Scott went first, because I was like, wow, like it's interesting to even like ask myself that. But I think it can be, I could look at it from so many different viewpoints, to be honest. But I guess the one that stands out to me the most is, I'm going to try to explain this right, but almost like sanctuary from myself, like to be a therapist well. I think I'm learning that I have to be able to show up authentically without being, without getting my stuff too in the way, so that I'm not, putting myself down a bunch or being a people pleaser and not doing the best of my ability to like meet that person, with where they need.
So I guess to love it.
I don't know if that really.
We're people pleasers too. We want to please our clients.
Yeah, and so I guess that's when I thought about that. I was like, yeah, sanctuary. Yeah, if I can show up as myself in a really calm, authentic way, then that is kind of a sanctuary. That is a safe space for me because then I can be real and support someone else without feeling like I'm unsafe doing it from my own self-combat. So
So
that's
true. Because like there's so much going on in our heads when we're counseling people.
so much.
Way too much most of the time.
Yeah.
It's like having 5 conversations at once.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like you're trying to be this container for someone, but then you also have to be your own container. And it's an interesting dance to do it at the same time.
It is. Willa, what would you say?
Well, I think my sort of first thought was kind of similar to Haley's, in that like my first thought was myself. I need sanctuary for myself from all the kind of critical, really judgmental thoughts that kind of go in my mind and kind of block me from kind of just allowing like peace. And I think even as kind of Scott mentioned, how like these different sort of experiences that we go through in our education, in life, in childhood, all kind of come in and like, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't be doing that, or this kind of, why would you say that? And kind of
The running hellish narrative.
Right. Yeah. This very strong narrative that's kind of been reinforced by different things. Oh, geez. Yeah. I think just myself, like from my really critical, strong, judgmental thoughts that kind of really come in is what I need sanctuary from.
Do you think, Willa, that your clients realize what it's actually like on the inside of you?
No. Yeah, I think if they could hear, like, oh my gosh, she's a hot mess.
They would probably love you more. That's what I think. I know, I've thought of that. I thought of like what people might think if they're not therapists and they listen to this. And then I thought, like, why do we have to hide this part of ourselves? So that's the whole point. It's sort of counterproductive if we want to be more real, to feel like, God, I hope nobody actually listens to how real things get in our heads.
Have you ever read some of the Reddit channels about what does my therapist think of me?
Yes, I've read it on Quora. Is it Quora or Quora?
Yeah,
yes.
It's like
and the therapists that write in that give the perfect chiseled answer,
that you just think, you liar.
I just don't. Yeah, they say things like, does my therapist like me? And they're like, it's a therapist's job to appreciate all the things about their clients. And I'm like, where are the real people that say, no, I can't fucking stand you? Or, yes, you're my favorite client.
Yeah, like, right. Oh, if you weren't my client, I would probably be your friend. Or like, can we hang out because you're so cool?
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of, we keep it out of the room, obviously, but it is in there. Yeah. What feels nerve-wracking to talk about here and now as a therapist for you guys? Like, I have my set of things that feels taboo to actually say. Do you have things that feels like, oh, I shouldn't talk about that?
I think the imposter syndrome is a really silent elephant in the room often with therapists, and we don't even talk about it. We talk about it with our interns, but we don't talk about it with each other. It's like the minute you're graduated, that it doesn't exist anymore, and it's probably worse than when you're graduated than it is when you're an intern and you don't have that quite the same sense of responsibility. Mm-hmm. When you're in practicum and you're counseling every day, you're very conscious that there's a clinical supervisor looking over your shoulder, that your notes are being read, that your practice is being tracked. But when you're kind of independent, it's more of a shit, I could be doing anything.
I know, it's so behind closed doors.
Yeah, and like one of my trauma clients read to me the CRPO, the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario, decision on her complaint about her previous therapist. And like, this is a huge element of trust to her sharing this with me, like what she'd gone through with her previous therapist. And hearing this kind of, the results of this hearing was terrifying, purely from this is why we need to talk about what it's like to be a therapist, because people are out there practicing like this, but unable probably to check in with anyone safely.
Right. I agree.
Like, someone who clearly was way, way out of their depth with trauma should never have been working with a trauma client, doing all the wrong stuff, and they end up in a disciplinary, they end up with a client harmed, but where's the safe space to talk about what it's actually like to do the work?
Right. And do you feel like you can say, I mean, we're all taught this in a master's program, but do you actually feel when you're trying to make a living that you can say, I don't know what I'm doing. I actually don't think I know what I'm doing. And like, to say it in a way that actually opens you up to be able to explore whether you do, because it's a little bit different than just feeling like I'm shit at everything I do. Like, that imposter voice of, when are they going to know that I don't know what I'm doing, is different than actually, I am actually not trained to do this.
Yeah.
There's a little subtle difference. And I think you're right. I don't think there's as much openness between therapists as maybe people might think to share vulnerably. Yeah. Yeah. Does imposter syndrome show up? How does imposter syndrome show up for you, Haley, or you, Willa? Whoever wants to go next.
I mean, I am still on the cusp of even being, like, taking on clients. I have 2 recurring clients that I've seen for quite a long time, but they're through connections that I know of. And so I'm in this funny little, like, transition zone where I can feel all these things about to happen, that I will be feeling this, but I'm still in this very limbo space. Yeah. Close. Soon, though. But yes. I think the more I'm not practicing, to be honest, it's those thoughts creep in of, like, what am I doing? And do I know how to do what I've been trained to do?
I forget everything.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see.
I think that, like, kind of to add a layer of confusion to, like, the imposter syndrome, is that therapy is so different with each therapist, with each client. Even like the approach that somebody might use could look very different with me versus Haley or Scott, and so there's no like comparison or being able to kind of judge where or how we're implementing these techniques or interventions, or even just like the way that we're explaining or doing. And I think that added layer just adds to that imposter syndrome. Like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, we all could be CBT therapists, but we all do it differently. There's different steps, or they might, start with a different, like, start challenging thoughts, or start with bait, and then, like, what is the right way, and what is there a right way? And it just kind of adds to that feeling of not knowing, or if you're kind of doing it right. And I think, we all want to do the best and, like, do the best and be the best for our clients. So that kind of added pressure just, like, adds so much more. Because it's like people's lives that we're dealing with. So yeah, I think that that's just kind of what came up when we were kind of talking about it.
Such a good point.
Yeah.
You know what it makes me think about is it still happens to me now that when I would feel the worst about myself as a therapist is when I would go to a training. Like I would go to a training and I'd be very excited and anticipate it and I'm going to learn so much and it's going to be so great. And then I would be in the training thinking, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be. And what I realized was the trainings were often taught by people who were purists of that type of work. And I have yet to meet a therapist in real life who's a purist, who only does one thing. And so it became fascinating to me to figure out, number one, how can I go to training and not feel like absolute crap about my ability to do this thing they're perfectly modeling, it felt like. And number two, how do you weave it into who you not only are as a person, but all the things that you want to do with people? Because that's what I find is missing in our field is how do you sort of have 5 or 6 types of therapy in your head and figure out which one to do at which moment, in which session, with which person. I've never seen a training on that. Wouldn't that be awesome? Oh my God.
I think
somebody do that.
You kind of do, though. I mean, I think we've said it before, and I think it deserves saying again. I learned more in my 8 months with you guys than I learned in 2 years of graduate study, and more than I learned in my practicum. I learned how to truly what the authentic use of self meant after 8 months with you. That was kind of just this theoretical concept that they talk about. But in our experience of hearing each other's material, practicing with each other, having you there, and like, I came to it very much like, I'm not psychoanalytical, I'm, narrative. And now I practice probably more like you than anyone, in the sense of I
don't even know what I do.
Well, I'm kind of just all about like unconscious material.
Yes, right. Unconscious material.
So much more engaged with, like unconscious material. Like, this is important stuff.
Like, shouldn't I know that? That's the kind of shit that I think we don't talk about enough is when you say that, the first thought I have in my head is, I don't even know how to describe. Like, how people seem to know who they are clinically? I'm CBT. I'm a little bit of this. And I sometimes feel like I know it, but most of the time I'm not sure. And yet it kind of just, I guess, as you go through this process with people, I bring in little bits of who I really am and my story, and little bits of something I learned in a training that stuck 25 years ago that I use over and over and over and over. And something that I start every session with that I learned from a course, like it's this conglomeration of stuff, but I don't know what I would call it.
I would say you're the most humanistic therapist I've ever met.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go with that. And you know what I used to say, which I think lots of new people say, is I'm eclectic, which I always felt was code for me saying, I don't know what the fuck I am. I'm everything and nothing. But it felt like the right thing to say. I'm eclectic. And I kind of hid behind that because I thought nobody could pin me down if I said that. They couldn't test me on some theory that I didn't really understand. Oh, God. Our self-esteem issues are showing. Mine are. Okay, where are we? I want to hear one thing that you love. Let's start with you, Willa, this time. One thing that you love about being a therapist that you did not anticipate or has surprised you, or just something you love.
Oh, okay. I feel like that's a good question. I think that I get, not that I didn't know this, but I think being a therapist has really allowed me to get to know myself a lot better. Which, I mean, you kind of hear that like, oh, you learn so much about yourself and, throughout the program, but I didn't actually really expect to like the extent of how much I learn, and being able to kind of relate to clients, have that empathy for them, and I think just really like experiencing like humanness at its core level. I didn't realize like how like fulfilling it can be. So
Tell me one specific thing, if you're comfortable, that you've learned about yourself that you don't think you would have known, or a story of an aha moment.
Well, I think actually, just like, I know it's kind of like ambiguous, but it feels like I think, I don't know. Okay, sorry. What was the question again? I feel like I'm like getting
It might be scary to say it. What is something you've learned about yourself that you didn't know until you became a therapist and started diving in?
No, I think it seems like so basic, but I learned that I can be me, and I'm actually
I love that.
yeah, and it's okay. So yeah.
And before that, what did you think?
Oh gosh, I think I thought that I had to be, I guess, this like I just like had all these unrealistic expectations of myself that I think like talking with clients and being with clients, like just accepting them for where they're at in their life and who they are, and kind of what's bringing them in. I've kind of learned to do that with myself as well. I mean, sometimes it's challenging, but
Nice.
yeah.
Okay, Haley, I want to know something you actually hate about being a therapist that you didn't realize would be part of it. I'm going all like love, hate, like let's go extreme. I'll be satisfied with dislike.
Something I hate. This is interesting for me to answer, actually, because I usually try and find things I like about something, but like I hate. I guess I really do struggle with the fact that so much of it's just so unknown. Like, it is not 2 + 2 = 4. It feels very, you just don't know what's going to show up until it shows up. And that sense of unpredictable content and not knowing how you're going to handle it, or like if you're going to be effective, if you're going to be liked. I do struggle with that.
I think anyone who's listening to this who is new is just going to love hearing that, like how difficult that actually is. And I don't think it gets easier, actually.
Great.
I had a chat with my accountant not too long ago about my taxes, which terrifies me and I don't understand it at all and it freaks me out. And I got a new accounting program, which equally don't understand it, freaks me out, don't know how to use it, but I have to learn. And she said this thing to me and I've been thinking about it ever since. She said, Jennifer, numbers are so easy. You just deal with the numbers. They never change. And if you make a mistake with numbers, you just fix it. And even last night, I was driving thinking, that is the polar opposite of what therapists feel and go through and what I feel. It's never that in the therapy room, right? Like it always feels ambiguous and gray and unknown and untouchable and, sort of complex and deep and messy, and that's where the healing is. Like the more it's like that, I think the more healing is going on. I should have been an accountant, but I would have sucked. It would have sucked at that. What do you think, Scott? Do you want to do a love or a hate, or both?
What I love is creating safety. I think that it's really undervalued. I think that a lot of therapists feel like, oh, the client is paying for this, let's get in there. But there's so much danger in going too quick, too deep. And just spending a session or half a session creating safety and providing reassurance and telling people that they don't have to tell me all the details in their stories. Just knowing the material there is enough. And trying to kind of resource them with their own skills that they might not have. And also just creating that safe space for people, and doing it virtually is different, which is why I have like crazy things like a teddy bear behind me, because for some of my clients, like with dissociative identity disorder, that's very reassuring for some of their child alters, because I do a lot of trauma work. So, and just in general, it's just providing a safe place for people's eyes to rest in your environment, and just being a safe presence, and sometimes saying nothing.
Yep. Getting good with silence. That's a skill all of its own. What about hate? What do you hate?
Am I allowed to say?
Don't get him started. Yes, you are allowed to say.
I don't enjoy working with really depressed people. That's just not my skill set.
I get that one. I used to fall asleep with people who were depressed. Like, I'd have to fight off falling asleep. I didn't actually ever. And that's how I knew they were depressed. And then I did my own sort of sadness work, and things changed.
And I'm kind of, I don't know. I guess I feel much more comfortable with like with a really dysregulated person who has like borderline personality disorder, whatever that means. You know, where the session feels like riding a psychotic horse towards a burning stable.
You like that? That's right up your alley.
That's kind of, yeah, like let's hold on and see where this pony goes.
Yeah.
I like that, but the clients that are very kind of flat and one-wordish, I find more of a challenge.
I think that people with borderline personality disorder who hear that there are therapists who love to work with them
love it.
would really feel good, because I think sometimes that disorder gets such a bad rap in our field. And yeah, there's lots of people who actually really enjoy that population, and you're one of them.
And that's part of creating safety as well. It's allowing them to split and call you from a pig to a dog and back again, and go back into the next session and just be the same and say, how you doing today?
Yeah. Just
and providing them with that stability of, I haven't walked away. I haven't abandoned you.
Right.
I don't find you too much. Because that's what they're hearing in every relationship in their life. You're too much. There's too this, there's too that. And to be a person who's just not too much for me. And you can say what you want, get it out of your system, like, you know, and then let's gradually start to re-regulate, but we'll do it together. I don't find that challenging. Of course, people are going to step away from a session, and then, like, if they send you an email full of fucks, I'm like, okay, see you next week. We still on?
I want to do a love and a hate. I'm going to say my hate is how unavailable therapy that is client-centered is in a free system. Like, I know we live in this country where it actually is quite available, but it still feels like it's not enough for people who are really marginalized and really hurting and have gone through lots of trauma and don't have a benefits plan and don't have, like I hate that it still at times feels like it's for the rich. Ooh.
And if there is a low-cost option, who do they get to see? The most unqualified person.
The students.
Yeah.
And let's just put a plug in for the students, though, because you guys rock it, because the upside of a student is they really, really care. And they want to do so well, and they want to, and it's good, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a mark on the system, not on students. The students end up doing some of the hardest work in the system.
Exactly. They do.
It's really easy to be a licensed CBT therapist in your lovely practice with people paying $150 an hour for you to do a worksheet with them. That's going to help the CBT therapist after me. I'm being extreme, obviously.
Should I post your address right now? Put it up on the screen?
But if you offer low cost, that was our frustration with our practicum, which was, if you offer low cost, who do you think is going to come?
Yeah. I know, the people that can't afford.
The most disenfranchised people in the system.
Yes. I would think that I love watching people actually heal, like the sacredness of that moment where someone, and I don't even know how to define that, but I can feel it when it happens in the room. Like something comes together or something happens that's never happened before. It's like crack to me. If I was a crack addict, but it was therapy moments, I'm very fulfilled and also can never get enough. The addict part of me, I never get enough of that. Okay, we're going to play a little game. Are you ready? Word association. I'm going to say a word, and then we're going to go really fast. You're going to say the word that comes to you. Bang, bang, bang. Scott, Haley, Willa. And then I'll do the next word. Okay, ready? Pain.
Oh, physical.
Sad.
Hurts.
Integrity.
Being me.
Following through.
Accountability.
Crying.
Good.
Release.
It's not one word, but all the time. You guys know that.
Love it. Hope.
Therapy.
Sparkly.
Light.
Suffering.
Therapy.
Just awful.
Darkness.
Childhood.
Complicated.
Doughy.
Oh shit. That's not one word, but
Family.
Chaotic.
Okay, we'll leave that as the word.
dialectical.
You.
Complicated.
Growing.
I don't want to sound like, but awesome came into my head.
Yay! Love that. Okay, I just want to maybe end us on this note of what advice would you give to a therapist starting day one of their practicum? Let's start the other way. We'll do Haley, Willa, Scott. First session.
That's me.
That's
Day day one, I would say that I think the most important thing is just to, above all else, like just listen really curiously, and even if you're not initially really interested, just try and almost like tell yourself like, okay, well, I want to be interested in this, and I want to know more about this person, and just listen.
Okay. Love it.
I would say it's normal to have a million thoughts running through your head, to feel a little bit distracted, to worry, to, want to do the best that you can do. But if you can kind of ground and anchor yourself and just remind yourself why you came into this profession, and just know that you're here for a reason, and to trust that and to be open to that.
Forget your interventions. Introduce yourself. I start my all new intakes with thanks for coming. I know this is really weird, uniquely weird, I always say, talking to a complete stranger about your deepest stuff. I've got some questions for later on. I've got some information to give you about how therapy works. But I'm going to start by getting to know each other, and I'll start by telling you a little bit about me.
Yeah. Boy,
And just introduce yourself.
Yes. I think I would say, imagine if you're not working with children, you're working with adults, imagine them as a little girl or a little boy, because that's what they are. And then it becomes not quite so terrifying. Because I really have come to believe that no matter who they are, what they do for a living, or how they look on the outside, inside they're probably scared little children. Yeah. Well, I've loved this. I think we'll stop there for today. And I want to thank you all for being here and putting yourself out there. And I've enjoyed having you. It's really, I think, going to be a powerful, comforting discussion for someone new to listen to and to hear from you guys. Yeah. So thanks.
Thank you.
You.
There we go.